It started with a blurry newspaper clipping and ended with a truth I wasn't ready for. Hi, I'm Nicole, a survivor of childhood trauma and one of the youngest people in U.S. history to ever testify in court against a parent in a double homicide case. I was 5 when I witnessed it, 6 when I spoke the truth. Now I help others unlearn the beliefs they had to carry just to survive, so they can claim their voice and feel safe in their own story. This is Unlearn the Trauma, real stories, quiet grief, and the truth about healing after childhood trauma. In this very first episode, I'm sharing the moment that changed everything. The day I told my little sister to pack because I thought no one was coming. If you ever felt like you had to grow up too fast, then this one is for you. And if you find yourself nodding along or feeling seen, please leave a review or pass this episode along to someone else. Let's grow this space one story at a time. I had this dream the other night. In the dream, I found this old newspaper clipping. It was faded, crumbled, and the ink was bleeding at the corners. It looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. The headline was smudged, but I could still make out the words. Child missing near 16th and L Street. And there was a picture, blurry but unrecognizable at first, but something in me knew. It was me. I couldn't read the full article, just fragments, a name, a date maybe, the implication I'd gone missing as a child. In the dream, my heart was pounding, but not in fear. It was something closer to confusion. And underneath that, something else, like recognition. And in the dream, the strange clarity came over me. Next time my dad calls, I'm going to ask him about it. But then I woke up, and of course, none of that ever happened. There was no article, no search, no missing child. But still, the dream clung to me. Not because it was real, but because it felt real. And maybe it wasn't far from the truth. But something else did happen. Something worse. After my mom and her friend Debbie were killed, there's this one moment I've never been able to let go of. I don't remember it in perfect detail. Trauma has its own way of blurring things, but I remember the feeling that we had to go. I was 5, and I started packing. I wasn't packing in any grown-up, organized way. I was a child. But I knew somewhere, deep in my bones, that something was broken. That danger had spilled into our house. And in my child mind, I thought, this is what you do when danger gets close. You pack. You leave. Because that's what I had seen my mom do. It was how she tried to escape the violence before. When things got dangerous and she needed to get away, she packed. She moved fast. She emptied drawers. So that's what I did. That moment lives in a strange space. Half memory, half body knowledge. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember how long it lasted. But I remember the motion, the feeling of it. I didn't have a plan. I was 5, just moving clothes, maybe toys, into whatever I could find. Not because I knew what I was doing, because I had to be doing something. And not because anyone told me what to do. My siblings and I were just there, alone. Until Cameron showed up. Cameron was Debbie's cousin. I don't remember how well I knew him or how often I had seen him. But I do know this. I tugged on his shirt and led him inside. And maybe he didn't know it. Maybe we didn't know it at the time. But his presence saved us. Because we were already packing. By then, I wasn't playing anymore. I was trying to leave. Because no one was telling me that we were safe. Because it didn't feel like we were. And I always think, What if Cameron hadn't come? What if that knock on the door never came? What if we had left before anyone had noticed? What if we had just disappeared? Because we could have. That's what people don't understand about trauma. It isn't about what happens to you. It's also about what almost happened, what could have happened. It's the instinct that takes over when the adults are gone and you realize, I have to do something, even if it doesn't make sense, even if no one told you how, and even if you're 5. I think about the possibility that we could have ended up on the streets, wandering, cold, hungry, scared, maybe even forgotten. No one would have noticed, not right away, not until it was too late. I've carried that with me for years, the knowledge that we were one decision, one absence, one tragedy away from being lost. Not metaphorically, literally. And that's what my dream felt like. Not a memory, not exactly, but a whisper from that possibility, a reminder of how fragile it was. Sometimes I wonder if that dream was trying to tell me something. Maybe it wasn't really about getting lost. Maybe it was about being found. Or maybe it was about what it means to not be found. To live in a world where your pain goes unseen, where your absence doesn't raise alarm bells, where children slip away quietly, invisibly, because the systems built to protect them are too slow, too understaffed, too indifferent. There's something also terrifying about that, and yet that's the part that stays with me. Not the violence, not the aftermath, but the invisibility. The realization that you can be hurting and no one knows. That you can be in danger and no one's coming. That you can vanish, not in the literal sense, but emotionally, spiritually, and the world just keeps turning. That's the core of trauma. It's not loud or dramatic always. Sometimes it's just the quiet understanding that you're on your own. So you learn to protect yourself. You learn to scan the room. You learn to keep your bags halfway packed. You learn that even if someone does come, it might be too late. Or they may not stay. It teaches you this one central truth. If I don't take care of me, no one will. It's not a lesson children should have to learn. But so many do. Sometimes I think about that dream and I wonder, was it just my subconscious piecing things together? Or was it something deeper? A kind of wish? A wish that someone had been looking for me? That someone read the signs, connected the dots, knocked on the door before the danger fully set in? Because when you're a kid in chaos, you don't always know how to ask for help. You don't know the words for what's wrong. You just feel it, and you hope someone else sees it before it's too late. And when no one does, that shapes you. That stays. I'm not that kid anymore. I've grown. I've healed in places I didn't even know were broken. But there are nights I still wake up with that feeling in my chest. That howl aching feeling that someone forgot to come back for me. Like I was supposed to be rescued, but the person got the address wrong. And maybe that dream was a way of my mind trying to give that version of me something else. Not a headline, because I had that. I was there. I was the witness. I was the testimony. Maybe what the dream offered was something quieter. A moment of being seen, not for what I survived, but for the fact that I was a child who shouldn't have had to. Maybe in the dream I wasn't missing. Maybe I was remembering. Maybe that dream was me searching for myself. For the version of me that still wonders what could have happened if Cameron hadn't knocked. if we'd be gone, if we had vanished. Maybe what I'm really trying to say is this. We all have a version of that dream, a moment where we realize we are closer to the edge than we want to admit. And that someone, maybe even a stranger, reached out and pulled us back without ever knowing what they saved us from. Sometimes the heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they just knock on the door. Sometimes survival looks like staying, and sometimes it looks like a knock on the door. That's what I've been carrying, but I know I'm not the only one. A lot of people have tried to put words around this kind of pain, so I want to bring in some voices that have helped me to make sense of it.
Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you. That's a good thing, by the way.
What Gabor Maté said is trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. That right there is what being that 5-year-old kid felt like. Because it wasn't about surviving what had just happened. It was about how it shaped me from the inside out. How it carved into my nervous system. How it taught my body to stay alert even in safe rooms. How I learned without saying it that love may not show up. That adults might disappear. That the world may not be paying attention. Maté talks about trauma as a wound caused not just by harm, but by absence. What didn't happen, but should have. And yeah, that hits. Because sometimes what scars you the most isn't the explosion. It's the silence that follows. It's packing your bag as a kid and realizing no one's coming. That wound doesn't show up in x-rays, but it shows up in your relationships, your self-worth, your breathing. Even if no one remembers it happened, your body does. So no, the trauma wasn't just the moment. It was the meaning I gave it. The way I disappeared inside myself just to stay here. But here's the hopeful part. If trauma lives in the body, then healing can too. Maté's quote on long-term distortion: the greatest damage done by neglect, trauma, or emotional loss is not the immediate pain, but the long-term distortions they induce in the way a developing child will continue to interpret the world. That voice in your head, the one that says, if I don't take care of me, no one will, it's not strength. It's not grit. It's a scar. I was 5 years old. I tried to call 911, but I didn't fully know how. I couldn't get through. And honestly, how many 5-year-olds know how? I shouldn't have needed to. I shouldn't have been in that position. But I was. And when the help you reach for doesn't arrive, when you learn that the lifeline might exist, but it's not guaranteed, you internalize that. You carry it. That's what Gabor Maté means when he talks about long-term distortion. It's not just the trauma itself, it's how your developing brain learns to make sense of the world. I didn't walk away from that night believing in safety. I walked away believing I was on my own. That belief helped me to survive, and now I'm learning. Maybe I don't have to live like I'm still 5 and alone anymore. Maté on coping mechanisms as survival. What seems non-adaptive and self-harming in the present was, at some point in our lives, an adaptation to help us endure what we then had to go through. When Gabor Maté says, what seems self-harming now was at some point an adaptation to help us endure, I think of that moment. I was 5. My sister was 3. My brother was barely 18 months. And I was packing up my clothes and their clothes, trying to prepare us to go somewhere, anywhere, because no one else was coming, because I didn't know what else to do. That's hyper-independence, not the kind that people brag about on LinkedIn, The kind born from crisis. The kind that says, if I don't handle this, no one else will. People see that trait in adults and call it control issues or emotional distance. But at its core, it's a child's survival instinct that never got a chance to rest. So, no, it's not dysfunction, it's a testimony. It's the clearest proof that I adapted early, fiercely, and alone. And now the real question isn't, why am I like this? It's, is it safe to put the suitcase down? And if you ever felt like you had to figure all of this out alone, I want you to know that there's a space for people like us, doing the work even when it's messy. That's why I created Unlearn the Trauma community. It's free right now while we're building it. And if you want to lend a hand or just feel less alone, I'd love to have you. You can join us at unlearnthetrauma.com/community. Okay, now on a lighter note. What if there was a lost and found department for children of trauma? Hi, I'm here to report something that went missing when I was 5. Great. What was it? A toy? A memory? No, my sense of safety? Okay, safety. Lost at what age? 5. Was that a Tuesday or a Thursday? I don't know. I was 5. That makes processing harder. Do you remember what you were wearing when the abandonment occurred? No, but I do remember telling my sister to pack. Mm-hmm. That'll go in the premature adult responsibilities bin. Is there any chance I can get it back? We don't return things here. We just validate they were in fact lost. Let's just come back down for a second. After all the laughter in my sketch, I want to tell you about a moment that still lives in my body. After my mom was killed, it wasn't chaos, not at first. There was this strange window of quiet. No police, no sirens, no shouts or alarms. Just stillness. The kind of silence that wraps around you. It makes you feel like it's moving in slow motion. I remember that silence like a weight in the air, heavy, suspended, almost like the world had stopped breathing. And in that moment, inside that silence, I turned to my little sister and I told her to pack. I was 5. She was 3. Our baby brother was still in a crib, 15 months old. Too small to understand, but somehow I think he felt it. That shift in the air when something unspeakable happens. That eerie stillness that comes not after a storm, but before anyone knows to call it one. I saw what happened. I saw my mother killed, and I understood she was dead. Even if I didn't have the words, I knew what I was seeing. And that unbearable, irreversible truth is what moved me into action. I pulled clothes from drawers. I told my sister to do the same, and she did. I don't remember exactly how I said it, just that I gave instruction like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't know what she understood, whether she sensed the danger the way I did or just followed my lead. But the fact that she listened, that she moved with me, says something about how quickly kids learn who is in charge when the adults go missing, about how survival doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like 2 little girls making piles of clothes because there's nothing else they can do. It wasn't a game. It wasn't pretend. It was survival. And here's the part that still lives in my body. If Cameron hadn't come to the door, what would have happened? Would I have grabbed my sister's hand and tried to carry my baby brother? Would we have wandered out into the street? Would we have sat outside waiting for someone to find us? Would we have become the headline from my dream? I think about our neighborhood sometimes, about the houses around us. Would anyone have noticed 2 little girls and a baby on the sidewalk? Would they have stopped, asked questions? Or would we have blended into the background, just more kids outside without supervision, in a world already too busy to look closely? I don't think anyone would have understood what they were seeing. That's the kind of thought that doesn't let go. Because the truth is, I wasn't being brave. I wasn't some little warrior or hero. I was scared. But I was also already acting like the adult in the room. Not because I wanted to, not because I was ready, but because no one else was there. That's where hyper independence begins. Not as a strength, not as a skill, not as something admirable, but as a survival strategy, an instinct, a scar. You learn to step into the adult role because the real adults aren't stepping in. You take charge, not because you're confident, but because someone has to. And you look around and realize it's you. I was 5 years old, trying to keep two younger kids alive, not because anyone asked me to, not because I thought I could, but because the alternative, doing nothing, felt even scarier. And that instinct, it never fully left. Even now, when things get too quiet for too long, I feel this pressure, like I need to be doing something, anything. Stillness makes me restless. I pace, I fidget, I open too many tabs, I throw myself into projects, I write, I build things. Other times, I freeze, I doom scroll, I procrastinate, I shut down completely. But even in those moments, there's still this undercurrent, a guilt, a pull, a voice saying, "Get up, handle it, no one else will." That moment pulling clothes from the drawers and telling my sister to do the same, it wired something into me I've never fully shaken. Movement became my safety, productivity became my protection, and underneath that motion is this belief: if I don't keep everything moving, something might break. And yeah, sometimes I still crash. Sometimes I'm just tired. But the pressure, it never really leaves. It's not that I never ask for help. I do. I've tried. But most people don't show up. They forget I don't have the same support system they do. Or maybe they just don't think about it. Maybe they assume I've got it handled because that's how I move. That's what I've always done. But the hardest part about hyper independence isn't being alone. It's realizing that even when you do reach out, no one reaches back. It's why for a long time I wore hyper independence like a badge. Strong, resilient, put together. But underneath that was a little girl trying to keep 3 kids alive in a house full of silence. And she was terrified. That's what I mean when I say trauma lives in the body. It's not just a memory, it's a pattern, a reflex, a quiet, invisible motor that keeps running long after the emergency ends. It's in the way I flinch when I hear raised voices, and how I freeze up when people ask too many questions. It's in my posture when I walk into unfamiliar places, tense, ready, scanning for exits without even realizing I'm doing it. It's not a memory I think about every day, but my body remembers. It always remembers. Even now, I have to work to notice when I'm doing it, when I'm slipping into the role of caretaker, planner, protector, when I'm bracing for something that may never come. Because once you've had to be the adult too early, it's hard to unlearn it. You feel guilt when you ask for help, shame when you rest, exposed when someone else takes control. You grow up fast, but in uneven ways. On the outside, you seem capable, mature, ahead of your age. But on the inside, there's this version of you that's still stuck, still waiting for someone to come back, still wondering if safety was something you were supposed to have or something you had to create on your own. That's the shadow of being 5 years old and having no one there. And that dream I had, the one with the newspaper clipping, saying that I was the one who went missing, I don't think it was about being lost. I think it was about how close I came to being forgotten. And maybe it was my inner child trying to say, I wasn't the one who disappeared. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who saw it, who lived through it, who tried to keep us going. I was the one trying to make sure we didn't get lost. That's a strange kind of grief to carry, being the witness instead of the victim, being the one who had to remember because no one else was left to. I wasn't missing. I was present. I was the headline. I was the testimony, but I was still a child. And no one should have to hold all of that at 5 years old. No one should have to make plans they can't understand. No one should have to lead their siblings through something unspeakable. No one should have to wonder what would have happened if help had arrived a little bit later. But that was my reality. That moment shaped me in ways I'm still unlearning. A lot of healing has come through reflection, through moments like this, where I slow down, tell the truth, and let myself feel what I've spent years outrunning. Writing has helped. So has giving language to the things I never had words for before. And every time I choose to name what happened without minimizing it, something shifts, something softens. I'm not all healed, but I'm not carrying it the same way I was. Some days are heavier. Some days it's just a hum in the background. But I now know healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning how to live beside it, about learning how to let it soften without letting it control you. It gave me strength I never asked for and consequences I never deserved. I've grown. I've healed in places I didn't know were broken. But that little girl, she's still in there, still telling her sister to pack, still listening for footsteps at the door, still trying to figure out where to go next. And maybe that's what the dream really was. Not a warning, not a memory, but a message. A quiet reminder from the younger version of me saying, I was there, I saw it, and I was trying to make sure we survived it. That was the moment everything shifted. And there's one more person who's never stopped holding on to that memory. So tonight, I'm going back to her. Hey! Do you remember what happened that day?
Yeah. Mommy didn't wake up.
What did you do?
I told my sister to get her stuff. We were supposed to go somewhere.
Why did you think you had to go?
Nobody was coming. I didn't want to wait too long.
Were you scared?
I didn't want to be. I had to help.
You were 5. That wasn't your job.
But I didn't know who else would do it.
You shouldn't have had to. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You came back for me.
If you're listening and you've ever felt like me at 5, lost, responsible, invisible, you are not alone. Before we close, I want to read something from one of you, because your stories matter too, and sometimes your questions say what all of us have been afraid to ask. Hi, Nicole. I've started therapy and my therapist keeps asking about my childhood, but everything feels blurry or half missing. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like something happened, but I can't remember the details. Does that mean I'm making it up? L31. First of all, thank you for writing. And because that question, I've asked it too, more than once. Here's the truth. Blurry memories are common when you live through trauma, especially as a child. Your brain doesn't file those experiences like birthdays or report cards. It stores them in pieces, sensations, flashes, gut feelings. Sometimes just the silence that followed. So if you feel like something happened, that feeling is a kind of memory. It doesn't mean you're making it up. It means your body protected you the only way it knew how. Healing isn't always about remembering everything. Sometimes it's just about saying, that version of me is real. And whatever they went through mattered. So no, you're not imagining it. You're remembering it in the way your nervous system could handle. And that counts. You don't need every chapter to understand the story. You were hurt. You were alone. And it wasn't your fault. Before we go, I want to leave you with one thought to unlearn. Hyper-independence is not a strength. It's a survival response. When you grow up with trauma, no one has to say you are on your own. You feel it in the silence, in the abyss, in the empty doorway where help never came. And you learn fast how to take care of yourself, how to show up, stay ready, and never need anyone. But that armor, that wasn't your personality. It was protection, and it all makes sense. But now you get to ask, is it still keeping me safe or just keeping me alone? You're allowed to need things, you're allowed to rest, and you're allowed to be held without proving how strong you are first. That's the lie we unlearn, and that's the truth we reclaim. Today I told you about the day I asked my sister to pack because I thought that no one was coming. Because that's what trauma does. It leaves us holding the heavy things in silence. And I know that version of me still lives in so many of us. The kid who took charge when they shouldn't have had to. The one who learned to be strong before they were ever safe. If that was you, I hope this episode reminded you it was never your job to carry it all. Thanks for staying with me through this story. It means more than you know. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd be so grateful if you left a quick review. Your words help more unlearners find this show, and I read every single one. Have you ever thought you were healed until something small knocked you sideways? Next week, I'm talking about the moment I realized I wasn't as fine as I thought. You're not going to want to miss this one. Unlearners rewrite the story one truth at a time. You've been listening to Unlearn the Trauma, and I'm Nicole.